ambassador at M&I. M&I University offers free online learning that is led by industry professionals. Our mission is to help you stay ahead in the manufacturing world by providing knowledge, insights, and inspiration through a wide range of courses on topics like sales, marketing, supply chain, and even emerging trends. You can join us live like we are here or access the expert content at your own pace anywhere at any time online. For those of you who don't know M&I, allow me to share a little here. We're also known as Manufacturers News Inc. Sorry, just letting more people in. Sorry. We're also known as Manufacturers News Inc. And since 1912, we've been connecting buyers and sellers in the industrial world through our publication tools like the Manufacturers Directories, IndustryNet, and Industry Select. Today, we're talking all about emails with my connection turned friend, Maggie Bloom. Maggie, thank you so much for always having the answers to our email questions because you always have the answers. And also, thank you for hosting now your third M&I University. The floor is yours, Maggie. Take it away.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for that introduction. And yeah, I love what M&I does with M&I University because I've bought a lot of tools in the past and software, and I've worked at software companies. And I think it's always like we're left with questions that can't really just be answered with the service that we're using or the software that we're using. And I love that M&I offers this to, well, really publicly, but to anyone that's, currently with them, that they can learn more about everything surrounding the topic of M&I and industry select and things like that. So super excited to be here today. Yeah, like Katie said, it's my third M&I University presentation, and I'm pumped. A lot of the topics I typically talk about are all with an email. Today, we'll talk specifically about deliverability, but that doesn't mean that you can't ask me other email questions. And just as a background and why you may want to listen to me today is I've been working in email as an email software and deliverability for the last 5 years. I worked at a software company, Mailshake, where I learned a lot about these things. And now I work with my partner, Pablo, and we work at a company called Luster Group. And it's helping people with deliverability. So if they're not getting great results with specifically email, they'll reach out to us and we can help them. But I want to give you free information. I don't want to talk about our business and what we do today too much. But yeah, today the topic is all about deliverability, decoded, mastering the art of the inbox. So I always like to talk about when I start talking about deliverability, it just seems like a buzzword. And it's like, why should we really even care about this word deliverability? And the reason being is it's really all about getting into the inbox. And so I like to kind of show this little flow chart or kind of like ranking of things of what happens if you don't have good deliverability. And it really starts at the bottom. So if you don't have great deliverability, which means like your opportunity of getting in the inbox, you're most likely going to land in spam. And what happens when you land in spam? You don't start getting your emails open because they're in the spam folder. People don't reply to your emails. You're not really booking any emails off or booking any meetings off emails. You're not getting any pipeline in. You're missing quota, no commission or no money coming in. And I know that's kind of like the doom of things of the top of this list here. So hopefully that doesn't happen. And that's why I want to talk with you today. But that's why we should really care about this word deliverability. It's really about your opportunity or your chances of getting into the inbox. And there's even like a reputation. People can have good deliverability or bad deliverability. The purpose of this presentation today is to talk to you about how to get good deliverability or what happens if you land in spam. So just as an agenda, I'm going to talk about changes in the email landscape in 2024 and some things you should watch out for. What are things you can control? I always like to talk about this topic because I'm guessing most of the audience today is they aren't working in IT. And correct me if I'm wrong. You can tell me if you are. But I know my background is in sales, and I work with a lot of small business owners who are really doing sales by themselves or a small sales team. So it's like, what can you control as a sales or marketer or a small business owner when you're not part of an IT team and you don't know everything about deliverability or DMARC or DKIM and these things I'll get into. And then the last thing is like, hey, let's see that you figured out you landed in spam. What should you do next? Because I'm sure some people, maybe that's why they joined this call, have landed in spam before. Maybe they're hitting people's spam folder. Maybe people aren't reading their emails or getting them even just internally. So what do we want to do next from there? So let's talk about changes in 2024. So there's two things that really have happened. Things have gotten more strict, and then the use of AI. So on the strict side of things, when it comes to email, that all comes from the two huge players, which I'm sure a lot of people on this call are using, Microsoft and Google. Basically, I always like to think of Microsoft and Google as these email providers that are always playing defense to spammers. So basically, spammers will start doing something. They'll start putting in spammy words, or they'll put in links that are bad links or broken links. And all these different things start sending a lot of emails, start sending really generic emails. And basically what Microsoft and Google does is they say like, you know what, that seems like spammy behavior. So let's play defense here and set up more policies to make emails more strict. And so it's not like we want to be spammers. It's really like we accidentally do things or we do things not knowing that these are spammy type behaviors. So basically, Microsoft and Google are tightening up email policies. I'll talk a little bit more about what those are specifically and things that you need to watch out for. And it kind of goes back to my second point here of what worked 3 years ago doesn't work anymore because of them playing this defense. And I'm not trying to say that you should like try to find a workaround with Microsoft and Google, but just be aware of what Microsoft and Google are putting into place and aware of what they really find important as a sender, especially for those people who are sending sales and marketing emails, because you could be doing something very innocent, but in the eyes of Microsoft and Google, they could be putting you right into a spam folder. And we'll talk about those things too. And then the second big thing is AI. I know everyone loves talking about AI in their presentations, so I'm sorry if I'm, boring you with bringing up AI in here, but it is really important. And I'd be lying if I said I've never used AI to help me write an email. I even used AI a little bit to help me with one of the slides on here. But basically, AI is becoming a tool for sales and marketing people to write emails. And I totally think that's fine to get ideas, but I see a lot of salespeople or marketing people that aren't necessarily lazy, but they don't have a lot of time in their hands. So when their boss or someone at the company is like, hey, we need to push out a new campaign, they just turn quickly to, let's say, Chat GPT, and they have them write like a whole cadence for them or a whole sequence of emails. That's where I think it's problematic. And if you're just copying and pasting that and putting that into like a sequencer tool or sending those out, that's where I think a problem could come up. So I think use AI, but just don't copy and paste it. Use it for ideas. Use it for, if I'm reaching out to this target market with this many leads and this is what I offer, use prompts like that that can help you out. Because the problem with AI and what I've seen change in 2024 is emails are getting way, way more generic. And what happens with that is if I'm getting an email from, let's say, Katie, and it's very similar to other emails I've gotten, I'm just going to ignore it. And that might be really similar because everyone's using AI and everyone's using the same type of structures, the same type of hooks, same type of subject lines, et cetera, et cetera. Not only will I get bored with that as the reader, but Microsoft and Google actually are going to be able to detect that AI generated content. So like on my second point under AI, spam filters can now detect that. And if they see the same emails going out or the same structure of emails, they can get you into a spam folder too. So just avoiding that repetitive content from AI. So two big changes, Microsoft and Google are getting more strict. The use of AI is also getting decoded and putting people into spam folders too. Okay, cool. So like I said before, deliverability can be a really technical topic, and landing in a spam folder can be technical too. So what can you control as, let's say, a small business owner, as someone a part of a sales team, a marketing team? And before I even get to the next slide, I really just want to talk about like what has happened in the last 3 years, and why that there's so many significant changes in 2024. It's because like 3 or 4 years ago, a lot of these tools came out where you could find really great data, and you could also send emails kind of like in a mass way. I think those tools are great, but they're only great if they're used right. So in the last 3 years, people have obviously abused those tools. They just get lists. They don't really know much about those lists. They send off emails in mass. They don't really personalize anything. They use AI generated content. So it's like it became almost like this spray and pray approach where it's like, hey, if we put more emails into circulation and send more emails, we're going to get better results because, we're pushing out more emails. We're going to have more chances to people to respond to us. That is not going to work anymore. And that's why I want to talk to you about like how you can change the narrative with that and think about the things you can control. So basically, you really want to make things more human. So thinking back to how you normally just send an email if you were in marketing and sales in the past, before those 3 years or 4 years, like sending off a one-off email to someone, that would look a lot different than if you were writing an email for a group of like, let's say 50 or more than that. So we need to get a bit more specific, but let me talk about that. So the things that you can't control, and most of that has to do with copy or the people that you're reaching out to, is you want to optimize your emails for replies. So a ton of times when I'm doing kind of an analysis or looking at people's deliverability, I'll start looking at their content. And the first thing I see is that there's no clear action that someone can take in the email. Like the email ends with like, if you want to check out our website, here it is. Or if you want to get in touch, let me know. It's just very vague. Like there's no specific next steps. So every time someone wants to change their email or they're asking me questions of why they're not getting great results, it's typically because their email doesn't have a next step. So I'd say in your emails, make your last line really clear about what you want your prospect to do, and you want to optimize it for replies. I'm not into click on a link here to go somewhere, because you're not getting good engagement with your email. When it comes to deliverability, you want people replying to your emails because you want it to make it seem like it's a two-way conversation. If you're just sending out an email with a link in there, people click on that and then they forget about your email. They're like, all right, maybe I'll click on this, maybe I won't. And sometimes people think links are very dangerous. So avoid those. Make sure that the end of your email and the next step is you're looking for a reply. So you can do something really simple like, are you interested in this? Is this something that's relevant to you? You can even ask, like, if you want to hear more from me, reply yes. If you don't, reply no. But make it really clear that you want them to respond to the email and that it has a next step there. And then the second thing is make sure in your emails, you're writing emails for brand awareness, not to book meetings. And that's why I don't like links in emails to a Calendly link or asking for 30 minutes of someone's time. Because if it's the first time you're sending an email over to someone and they're already asking you for 30 minutes, like I said earlier, sales, marketers, any type of position, anyone in the workforce is really busy. So they might be interested in what you're saying in the email, but they don't have time to meet with you for 30 minutes. So avoid doing that when you're sending out cold emails. The purpose of cold emails should really be about brand awareness. Like, is this interesting to your prospect? Could they potentially take a meeting in the future? Things like that. But just forget about booking a meeting with them if it's a cold email the first time you're talking with them. And then avoid excessive emails. Avoid sending excessive emails a day. And this comes with some of the updates that came with Google and Microsoft. So like I said, in the past, the spray and pray approach was super popular, but that's not going to work anymore. You really need to get strategic. You need to segment and you need to send less emails a day, because that's part of those Google and Microsoft updates. Is if you're sending, let's say me, if I go to my email today and I say like, okay, cool, I have 100 prospects and I want to send 100 emails out to them. That's 100 emails I'm sending out to someone I've never emailed before. So I use Google. Google's going to notice that, like, that's odd. Maggie's sending 100 emails out to people she's never talked to before. So first I do that. And let's think about how many people actually respond to the first cold email. Let's say, I don't know, like 5%, maybe even less than that, maybe a little bit more. But let's say 5%. So only 5 people are responding out of those 100 emails. My email provider is going to think that's a little sketchy, that I'm looking a little bit like a spammer, even though I'm not spamming anyone. But that's what they're thinking. They're like, that's really odd. Maggie sent 100 emails out and only got 5 responses. So avoid doing that. Send 20 emails per day. If you want to send more than that, you can set up multiple email addresses or have more people on your team send emails. But I like sending 20 emails per day too. And I think it's a really good practice, especially if you feel like maybe your emails aren't getting read or maybe you're hitting spam, because it allows you to test. So if I'm only sending 20 emails out per day and I'm getting second thoughts like a couple days later, I can change up the messaging, or I can see that those 20 people didn't really react to my email, didn't open it. I can change that up. So avoid sending excessive emails. There's no longer, in the future, I don't think there's going to be days where you could send out 1,000 emails per day on one email address. Like, I just don't think Google and Microsoft are going to put you in the spam folder and blacklist you right away from that. But then again, the last 2 things on here is just think of it as a one-off email. So anytime I write a new campaign and I have my targeted list, I always think like, how could I still make this seem like I'm just writing an email to one person? And it doesn't come with crazy amounts of personalization, which there's great tools that do that. But I really think it comes to having a brief email. Like when you send emails back and forth asking questions to colleagues or people at your company, they're typically not like very beautiful written paragraphs. Sometimes there's those people in organizations that do that. But if you're just asking a one-off question, they're pretty brief. They're about 2 to 3 lines. They have a quick, clear call to action of yes, I can do that, or no, I can't do that. So think of it as a one-off email and then just be human. So we talked about changes, changes in 2024, what you can control in the position that you're in. The next thing I want to talk about, one second, well, is, okay, what happens if you actually land in spam? And I'll also add to that, it's like, what happens if you feel like you're really not getting any responses? If you have a tool that tracks opens, that your open rate is very low, I'm talking like under 5% or under 10%, what do you do? Because it can be really scary. You start thinking like, if my emails are landing in spam, maybe colleagues of mine are, no one's reading my emails. I'm using these lists, I'm using these tools and putting a lot of money into my email efforts, but nothing's happening. Also, you need to be careful about your domain. So when you start landing in spam, that could also put your domain in danger. So we use lustergroup.com, or another business that I work with is bbloom.com. If I'm sending emails and keep getting into spam, that could affect my website and my domain. So what do you do? So the first thing you do is don't panic. I've done tests in the past, even for someone who knows a lot about email. I've landed in the spam folder because maybe I put in the wrong link, or I've accidentally put a word in an email which you're not supposed to use, like free or guarantee could get you into the spam folder. So what do you do? The first thing you want to do, and I'm giving you these resources, they're all free, is you want to do some tests. So 2 really great tools that are going to identify spam triggers for you or any deliverability issues are called Mail Tester and Glock Apps. And I have my colleague Pablo on here, the founder of Luster Group. I think he'll be putting the links in the chat. So if anyone wants those are going to be free to use. Definitely do these tests, and even do these tests if you feel like you are getting in the inbox every single time. It's good to kind of just know where you're at. The second thing you want to do is check your domain reputation. So, like I said, if you start landing in spam a lot, that's going to start affecting your domain. So you want to make sure your domain isn't blacklisted, that you have everything set up correctly. And you're going to use MX Toolbox. Pablo did put that in the chat. Thanks, Pablo. MX Toolbox is going to check your domain reputation. So it's going to make sure you have a positive reputation and that you're not blacklisted. That's one of the most important tests, because I always like to say it's like, if you don't have your domain reputation right, and if you don't have your like all of that set up from the beginning, it's not worth it to even start running email campaigns. Like, that's the first problem that you want to take a look at and make sure that those things are all set up and ready to go. And what comes into that is improving your email authentication. So these are going to sound like buzzwords, or maybe some people have heard of them, but you really, really, really want to make sure that your SPF, your DKIM, and your DMARC records are set up. And this goes back to one of the big changes that Google and Microsoft made in 2024 is all of these records have been around. And basically the records that you set up on your domain. And if it starts to get too technical, that's where you can reach out to us or talk with someone on your IT team. But basically these records are passports for you to get into the inbox, or let's say like your driver's license. So you can definitely drive a car without a driver's license. Like, I'm pretty sure people are capable of doing that. But if you don't have your driver's license and the police pull you over, you're going to get in trouble. And it's the same thing. You can send emails without these records set up. And a lot of people do. It's one of the first conversations I have with people also is, do you have your DMARC record set up? And they typically say like, what is that? Or no, we don't. Or we've run a test and it's not there. Is you can send an email without those, but you're most likely going to be getting into the spam folder, especially with the changes in 2024. It's like Google and Microsoft are now requiring it. Like, no matter what, you have to send an email with these things set up in it. So make sure those are set up. How you set those up are in your domain records. So you can set it up on, like if you're using Google or HostGator, and Namecheap. I'm blanking on names of domain providers right now, but you would set that up there. So make sure that that's configured properly to prevent you going into spam. And again, you can check that out with what I put here. MX Toolbox is a tool that you can check if you have those set up correctly. And then the last thing, yeah.
Real quickly, I think we have a really good question here in the chat box. Someone is asking, is DMARC policy important? I know it sounds like DMARC is important, but is there policies that should be addressed with that? Can you go into any more detail to help us out, maybe?
Yeah, for some reason I don't see the question in here, so sorry if I didn't.
Well, it was sent to me directly. It's okay.
Okay. No. Yeah, it is really important. And yeah, the DMARC policy is part of like the whole overarching, sorry, give me one sec. Is the whole overarching of these records. Basically, it has to be set up and it has to be set up correctly. So you can put these into place. I've seen people do it the wrong way, but it is really important. Like I said, it's the driver's license for you to get into the inbox. I hope that answered the question. But anyone can reach out to me after this too. Yeah,
anyone can open up for questions at the end too and work through them.
Yeah, for sure. No, and anyone can always message me after this too, on LinkedIn or anything like that. The last thing of what you should do when you feel like you're going to spam, or you do some of these tests and something looks off, is reach out to two people. First, if you're using a tool and you're tracking open rates, like I used to work for a company called Mailshake, they send out cold emails on your behalf. and they also track your open rates. And if you feel like you're not really getting great results with your software provider that's sending these emails out for you, you're paying for that tool. So go to them, reach out to your email service provider and say like, hey, I'm not getting great results. Like, what's going on here? Can you help me out? Am I getting bad deliverability? Am I landing in spam? And they can typically walk you through some problems there. They may not have all the answers, but definitely use their help. Like if they offer free calls or you have a customer service rep, talk with them, get on multiple calls with them and say, hey, this isn't working. Like, I know this doesn't have everything to do with you, but I'm landing in spam and I want to know why. So reach out to them. The second thing is reach out to your IT team if you have one. I've worked at a lot of companies that don't have IT teams because we were bootstrapped. It was a small group of people. But if you're lucky enough to have an IT team, don't be afraid to approach them. First, they should be notified that you feel like you might be landing in spam. And second, they are really knowledgeable, so they can help you. They can walk you through specific things. So yeah, don't be afraid to ask them questions. But yeah, that's the gist of it. So when you land in spam, like I said, do those tests. I put the links in there. Make sure your DMARC record is set up, DKIM SPF record. And lastly, reach out to people like the softwares you're using or the IT team. And the last few notes before we kind of wrap it up here and I can open up for questions is if you've tried all those options and you feel overwhelmed, that's where you can connect with me and my team. It's Pablo and I. We work for a company, or our company is called Lester Group. And this is what we help people on a daily basis. So we offer free kind of 15-minute deliverability analysis calls to see where you're at. We can walk you through the tests that you've done and explain to you what's involved or what you should be careful for. Even you can ask us questions about DMARC. So I will put my contact info in the chat, and I know Katie will be sending out an email, so I'll put that in there. But if you still feel like you need help, reach out. And then the last two things is just remember emailing is human. So act like an email, even if you have these amazing tools. I always like to end these presentations and ideas with this quote that it's from Bill Gates. But he says the first rule of any technology used in a business is that automation applied to an efficient operation will magnify the efficiency. But the second is that automation applied to an inefficient operation will magnify the inefficiency. So it's just going back to what I said, like if you have all these tools, but you really don't know how to use them or you don't have a process to do it, or you're abusing the tools and the amount of emails that you can send out, it's going to be inefficient. You're not going to get results from it. But I'll end with that if anyone has any questions.
Oh, that was awesome, Maggie. I just have a few things here and then we can open up for questions.
Yep.
Could you cover for us really quickly a bunch of those things that you should not put in your emails, those no-no things? Like I know links, images, free, guaranteed, words like that are gonna probably put you in spam, but can you cover some more?
Yeah, for sure. So that was a great start. So first thing is avoid some words. Actually, there's a really good HubSpot article I'll send to you, Katie, after this, so I don't kind of just go from it. But avoid putting links, avoid putting images. There's kind of that, I think there's video tools that now make it really, really easy for you to put videos in emails. I wouldn't do that either. That's going to give you really bad deliverability. Avoid spammy words, which I'll send over that list. So things like free guarantee. And before people kind of maybe come at me saying like, oh, I put an image in my email and it was fine. I'm talking about cold emails. So people you've never emailed before. If I wanted to email Katie today and put an image in there or a link, that's totally safe. Her and I have had back and forth conversation for the last 3 years. So definitely avoid those things. And even if you do feel like you really have this urge to put a link in the email, I'd first say don't do it. But second, A and B test it. So have the same exact email side by side, one with a link, one without a link. See which one does better. I'm going to tell you it's going to be the one without the link. And last thing that people don't think about, your signature also includes this. So let's say you have a really fancy signature in your email with, I don't know, your image, your brand logo, your link. If you're sending emails out, cold emails, remove all of that, make it plain text. Don't put links or images in there. Yeah, I think those are some of those things without rambling.
Yeah, that covers quite a bit actually. Yeah, I just pulled up the HubSpot, so I will send that out to everybody in the follow-up email as well. I like how you said email like a human. You're talking to a human, so act like a human. I like that. It's good to keep that in mind. So my question for you, my personal question, I guess, before I open up for everybody to just go ahead and fire away. I want to clarify with you, if I have bad email habits, me, myself, at M&I, can I ruin M&I's reputation for all of the salespeople in the whole company?
Yes, you can. So that's a really, really good question. And I think people think that it's not going to affect anyone else except themselves. If you have bad email habits, that will eventually start affecting the whole domain of M&I. And if the whole domain is affected, people on your team or even just people in the company will see that happen. And what I suggest there for most teams, 100% of, I don't know, 99% of teams I talk to, is if you're on the sales team, because that's typically where these habits kind of come out, people get excited with these lists, is set up a new domain for your sales team. So for example, if it was mni.com, I'd use mni.co and have your sales team just send emails on that domain. So you can set up a secondary domain. That's totally fine to keep everyone else safe. Good question.
Fine. Okay, and then there's others in the chat box if you want to start going
Yes.
through them.
Yeah. Okay, give me 1 second. Matt, good question. What is your take on email warming? Are tools necessary? If they are, what should you look for? So before tools kind of came out for email warming, people would do it manually. And just to explain what email warming is to anyone else on here, it's an email warming tools. So let's say my email address, Maggie@lustergroup.com. I connected to an email warming tool and they send emails on my behalf, very safe emails that boost up my reputation. And they also respond on my behalf too. So they send me emails and they respond back to them. And what that does is it just has more normal activity of like one-on-one emails that boosts up your reputation. And I'd say, yes, it's important to warm up. Is a tool necessary? I'd say now it is, unless you have the time to send yourself emails back and forth to another person or a person at another company. I just think it's really time consuming. And what I look for in the tool is just to make sure that, like, what database are they sending tools or sending emails to? Is it a group of the same people? Is it different? Is it different companies? What kind of email addresses are they sending to? But yeah, email warming is really, really important because when you have a new email address, let's say I'm a new employee at M&I, for example, I start tomorrow. My email address is brand new. And then my sales manager says like, hey, I want you to send out 20 emails a day. So I start sending 20 emails a day. That's going to look really weird to Google and Microsoft. They're going to say like, this brand new person who's barely used their email address is now sending out a lot of emails. So definitely have it set up. And even if you've had an email address for a while, I always like to say it's like going to the gym before having a game. You want to make sure that you're training and like building up muscle on your email address and building up a good reputation before you send out a whole campaign. So definitely really important. I think, Pablo, if you're still around in the comments, maybe there's a good suggestion for an email warm-up tool that you have in there. But great question. Tony, what about attaching a PDF file instead of a signature with images? That's another thing I should have said to avoid. Definitely avoid attaching a PDF in a cold email. The reason being is Google and Microsoft analyze your emails when you send them over to another person. So, Tony, let's say you sent me over an email and it has links, images, spam words in there. That'll kind of flag something for them to put you into a spam folder because it's the first time you're emailing me. PDFs get even more dangerous because it's something you actually have to download. And I'm not saying you're doing this, Tony. I'm sure no one on this call would want to do this, but what spammers typically had done in the past is have a PDF attached with like a virus on it that they'd send over to someone. So me downloading that is really dangerous, and Google and Microsoft have gotten really good about making that safer, where PDFs typically will get filed into a spam folder too.
I think a lot of companies also have rules about that when and I know we do, but other places that I've worked at as well had rules about opening up any emails that have attachments to them. If you're not expecting them, you're supposed to send them directly to your IT department to have them look at them first. So that's another reason why I would never attach anything in a cold email. And usually when I do send something to somebody that's going to have an attachment, I will let them know I'm sending you an email with an attachment. Watch out for it.
Yeah. And it's, and if you're sending it back and forth with I've attached a lot of files to an email once to someone I had emailed like a ton in the past, but it still went to spam because it was like their email provider was really hypersensitive. Like, why is this person putting 10 PDFs in an email? It's also just like a very heavy email. And a good point too, Katie, let's say that email didn't even go to spam and you had a PDF in it, you still had to send it over to your IT team. It still raised a red flag with anyone at your company. So it's like, just avoid doing it. People find it very scary to get emails like that, even though that's not your intention. But yeah, great questions. Okay, we have another question in here. Is there a surefire way to know if the cold emails sent to prospects indeed landed in spam folder? So unfortunately, there's no I wish for someone as nerdy about email, I wish there was a way that I could just hang out in someone's email spam folder and see if it got there. But there are some kind of tips and tricks that you can do to figure out if you are getting into a spam folder. So the first is those tests. Some of those can actually test your email copy, the ones that are in the chat there. But the second thing is if you're using a tool that's tracking open rates. So if you see that your open rate is really, really low, like under 10 or 5%, that's where I'd say that I have a feeling most of your emails are going to a spam folder. But unfortunately, there's no way to just know if individually, if I send a cold email over to Katie, that I knew it would land in her spam folder. Good question, though. And then I think the last one that I see here, unless anyone has any more, but if we have sent emails to several prospects in one go, let's say 200 emails, how can this be corrected now? If you send emails to several prospects. So yeah, like you used to send 200 emails to, or 200 prospects emails in a day. How can that be corrected now? I would just say, don't keep doing that. I'd go back to kind of sending the 20 per day, and spreading that out over time. And if you really feel like you want to send 200 prospects an email in one day, then I'd set up 10 different email addresses to do that safely. But I wouldn't actually send out those 200 a day anymore. I don't know if that answered your question, but let me know.
Good stuff. Excellent questions too.
Yeah, really great questions. And Yeah, it's things that we don't think about. It's like all I think everyone on this call is really innocent. I don't think anyone's trying to spam anyone. But it's like we kind of just get in these habits because we're taught in sales or marketing sometimes is if you reach out to more people, you're going to get better results. Um, and there's just, you have to be careful around all of these things. So I don't think anyone on this call is a spammer. It just so happens that things get really strict and um, we need to ask these really good questions. So thanks.
Mhm. And, I think it bears mentioning as an example, the three of us, you and I and Pablo, have had email exchanges before where suddenly emails weren't being delivered. So I don't think it's foolproof straight across the board, no matter what you do. I think sometimes emails still end up in spam, even when they shouldn't.
Yeah, yeah, that's kind of the that's the gist of it. It's unfortunate, but you're kind of in the control of other of email providers, Google and Microsoft. And so when they make those changes, it's like you could have been like, for example, I used to send emails freely, cold emails without DMARC set up, and it was totally fine. And then one day I started noticing like, wow, my open rate's not that great. And then I read an article, and I think it was like on LinkedIn, someone posted about it. And then I started researching it a little bit more, and I was like, oh, now Google and Microsoft are requiring DMARC, and I've never even heard of that. That this was like 4 years ago. So now I have to learn how to do that. So it's like it's all trial and error, and keeping yourself like educated on these things, and that's what Pablo and I do, so people don't have to. So again, if anyone ever has questions in the future, you can reach out to us or dealing with the problem right now too.